From the KBVR TV studio on the campus of Oregon State University, this is the Beaver Sports Show.
Welcome back, Beaver Nation, to another edition of the Beaver Sports Show. Joining me tonight from Against the Spread on KBVR FM is Alex Crawford.
Boon, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Excited to be here. And you can catch Against the Spread Sports Talk Radio with Boon and I, Fridays from 2 to 4.
Happy to have you on the show, Alex. Well, we have a great show planned for you all tonight as we catch up with OSU gymnast Olivia Vivian and the Zombie Zumba.
The women's volleyball team was back in Gill Coliseum last weekend as they took on two Pac-12 opponents, Colorado and Utah.
And the Oregon State football team goes into this week's game against the Stanford Cardinal and Andrew Luck, reeling from their disappointing showing in Salt Lake City against the Utah Utes. Sports Show reporter Audrey Wiltz has more.
The OSU football team traveled to Salt Lake City, Utah this past Saturday to take on the Utah Utes in their first ever battle in the Pac-12. Although the Beavers haven't won a back-to-back away game since 2008, they were hopeful to take their Pac-12 record to 3-2. Unfortunately, the Beavers did not come out on top for this game, falling to the Utes 27-8. Ranked third in the Pac-12 for defense, Utah held Oregon State scoreless for the first three quarters, but did not exactly come out strong themselves offensively. Utah's Coleman Peterson hit a 48-yard field goal, putting up the only points that would be on the board in the first quarter. It was in the second quarter when the Utes really got going. Utah quarterback John Hayes completed two passes for touchdowns to Drace Anderson and Devontae Christopher and had a 6-yard run into the end zone from John White, scoring a total of 21 points in a 7-minute span. This brought the game to 24-0 heading into halftime. Both teams would remain scoreless in the third quarter, and it wouldn't be until the fourth quarter when the Beavers finally put up some points. Coming into the game, Marcus Wheaton was the team leader for receptions at a total of 51, but still had no touchdowns for the season. With a 3-yard pass from Sean Mannion early in the fourth quarter, this would change, making it Wheaton's first touchdown of the season and the 8th of his career. Following the touchdown, the Beavers failed to make the 2-point conversion, but 2 points were added to the board on the Beavers' side shortly after because of a penalty by the Utes in the end zone, bringing the Beavers' score to a total of 8. Utah would come back to kick a 20-yard field goal and ended the game with that in a 27-8 loss for the Beavers, giving Utah their first win of the Pac-12. Taking a more in-depth look at Mannion, who was named Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Week last week, was 27 of 49 with 231 total yards in this week's game. The amount of total yards would make Mannion one of 3 OSU Beavers in history to surpass 200 passing yards in a game for more than 7 games consecutively, with the others being Sean Canfield and Derek Anderson. We can see that, though, the young quarterback had a tougher time with the Utah defense as he was picked off 3 times and was also sacked 6 times in Saturday's game. In other highlights, James Rogers became one of 3 OSU players in history to have reached 200 catches. His career total now stands at 206 after 7 catches in the game against Utah. Jordan Bishop had 5 receptions for the Beavers on Saturday, as well as freshman Brandon Cooks with 5, making it his single-game career record thus far. Next up for the Beavers this Saturday, as we all know, is Stanford at Reser Stadium. Kickoff is scheduled for 12:30 p.m.
Well, it was certainly a disappointing game in Salt Lake City last weekend as the Beavers fell to the Utes 27-8. Sean Mannion was sacked 6 times. They really didn't develop any offensive rhythm. Alex, what were your impressions on the game?
You know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The team looked bad out there. They looked like a complete 180 from the week before against Washington State. And I could point out a lot of things I didn't like about the game on Saturday. What about you?
Well, you know, like I said, Sean Mannion sacked 6 times. The offensive line struggled once again this year as they really established no running game. OSU only had they only had 32 yards on 26 carries, which is good for a 1.2-yard average, which is not going to get the job done in any level of football. No. But, you know, let's talk. What were your thoughts on the game?
Well, the team, they come out there and they just look unprepared. They look poorly coached, and you see this play calling. And I know Mike Riley's a good coach. I know he has it in him. We've seen it before. But the play calling, it's all over the place. They won't establish a rhythm. You know, the offensive line, they used to pass blocking. You call a run play, they're trying to run block. You know, what are they doing? It's hard for them. And the team, they just didn't look prepared out there.
And I know you've mentioned that on the radio show, you know, the difference between the pass blocking. But, you know, I have to ask, you know, where is this, how is there such a 180 from Washington State to Utah? The Beavers, you know, played flawlessly in Seattle against the Cougars. And then to go into Salt Lake City, you know, with a ton of momentum, where did it go wrong? Like, was it the start of the game? Was it Sean Mannion getting sacked 6 times, throwing some picks?
Let's not forget that, you know, Utah, from so far what we've seen in Pac-12 play, is a much worse team than Washington State. So that's even weirder. And I guess I'd have to point out 2 problems. One, it's an inexperienced team. They're not going to have that consistency that you'd expect out of a veteran team, a team that's been there before. And at the same time, I'd like to point out that they just don't look well coached out there. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, but they just don't look prepared.
Well, definitely Beaver Nation has been disappointed, obviously, and the players are too, and definitely the coaches. And I bet nobody's more disappointed than Mike Riley and the guys on that team. But, you know, were there any bright spots? Did you see anything?
It's really tough to pick a bright spot after watching that game. I mean, the first half, we looked dismal. But I would like to point out the one thing that really was a bright spot to me was Marcus Wheaton catching his first touchdown of the season. I mean, who would have thought this late in the season that fullback Clayton York would have 2 touchdowns on the season and Marcus Wheaton would have 0 going into last Saturday's game? But he finally got rid of that goose egg, got a touchdown on the board. So good for him.
Yeah, and I'd also like to mention, you know, Johnny Hecker. He's done a great job this year punting the ball. He had a 52.5-yard average against Utah. And yeah, you hate to see him punt the ball 7, 8 times like he did, but, you know, that's a solid spot in special teams, and that can help you win games later in the season. But moving on, you know, we all know the Stanford Cardinal are coming into Reser Stadium this Saturday. Kickoff is at 12:30 p.m. on ABC regional television coverage. Do the Beavers have a chance? I mean, we all know about Stanford and Andrew Luck.
You know, I'll say on paper the Beavers do not have a chance. But let's not forget that the last 20-plus point underdog to come into Reser Stadium, or where we were the 20-plus point underdog, was USC in 2008. And we all know how that game turned out. So if the Beavers do have a chance, it's that, you know, those intangibles playing at Reser Stadium. We know the underdog role. We've been the giant killers before. So if we have a chance, that's it.
Yes, I agree with you. I would say that there are some differences between those 2 teams. Obviously, that 2008 team finished going to a bowl game, finished really well, but also the leadership at the quarterback position. Not that Sean Mannion is not a leadership, but, you know, those were veteran players, you know, in Lyle Moivau, and that defense had a record number of OSU players drafted to the NFL from that defense: Victor Butler, Slade Norris, a lot of other guys, Al Afalava. So they're, you know, you're definitely right, but these 2 teams, I think, are in opposite spots right now. Talking about Andrew Luck, though, he's been absolutely amazing. This guy has to be the final Heisman favorite or the Heisman winner by the end of the year.
Yeah, no, he's definitely in my top 3. He's right up there. You know, if LaMichael James doesn't get hurt, there's another Heisman hopeful in our own conference. But to stop Andrew Luck, I think the one thing, we're not going to stop him. We can only hope to contain him. We have to stop the bleeding early. We cannot fall behind early like we did against Utah. Utah, a team that was winless in the Pac-12, jumps out to an early lead on us, and we lose to them. If Stanford does it, I mean, who knows what's going to happen in Reser? Who knows how empty those stands are going to be in the 4th quarter? So we have to hang in there early and don't fall behind.
And the Beaver defense is definitely going to have to get to Andrew Luck. And Scott Crichton and Dylan Wynn and those other guys on the defensive line are going to have to do an absolutely phenomenal job. And it's going to start with getting pressure on Andrew Luck, but also stopping their running game. Stephon Taylor, 796 yards rushing so far this season, 5.9-yard average, 8 touchdowns. He's really been a workhorse for them, but, you know, it all starts with Andrew Luck and getting pressure on him, I think, is going to be the key.
Yeah,
OSU.
I could not agree with you more. Dylan Wynn, Scott Crichton are going to have to be in the backfield, disrupting, not letting Andrew Luck get comfortable back there. In addition, we saw the defense's inability to tackle on Saturday. I don't know the Utah running back's name, but he broke off that run. Everybody was not even fully wrapping up. There was a lot of arm tackles. The defense needs to wrap up and not let the running back, break tackle after tackle and break off big runs like that. It tears the defense apart. And the longer Stanford's on the field, the more tired our defense gets, and the chances of us winning go down exponentially. So the defense has to wrap up and make tackles right away.
Yeah, and hopefully, if they can, force a turnover. Andrew Luck's only thrown 4 interceptions this year. He's only been sacked 4 times this year as well. So it's definitely an uphill battle for the OSU defense. But, predictions. What does OSU have a chance win? What is your prediction?
I'm going to have to predict the loss, but it is a 21-point spread coming into that game. Stanford's 21-point favorites, although they are on the road. I think the Beavers have a chance to cover. I think the Beavers can maybe hang in there a lot more than the experts predict. Final score prediction, I'm going to go something like Stanford 38, Oregon State 28. I just don't think we can stop Andrew Luck. He's possibly the best quarterback coming out of the NCAA since Peyton Manning. So I don't think we stop him. I think we lose by about 10, but we do cover the 21-point spread.
I like it. And, even though it would be a loss, a 38-28 score means a pretty good football game, and that's all you can really hope for at this point in the season for Oregon State. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we'll have more of the Beaver Sports Show, including highlights from this past weekend's volleyball matches. The wrestling team got back to their winning ways.
So what's next for Calvin Haynes?
Where we show the world watching the Beaver Sports Show on KBVR.
After snapping their 7-game losing streak last week against Washington State, the women's volleyball team looked to win their 2nd game in a row against the Colorado Buffaloes. Colorado came into the game winless in the Pac-12 and with an overall record of 5-16. It took 5 sets, but the Beavers pulled through and got the W. With more on Friday's match, here's Beaver Sports Show reporter Casey Colvin.
Thanks, guys. I'm here at Gill Coliseum where our women's volleyball team is taking on Colorado Buffaloes. Go Beavs! Let's go check them out. Our Lady Beavs played strong in the match against the Colorado Buffaloes this past Friday. The Beavers took the overall win of the night, winning 3 out of 5 sets. The score for the first set was 27-25, the second set was 25-20, third was 21-25, the fourth was 23-25, and the final set was 15-9. Junior Camille Saxton tied her career high kills with 22. Freshman Erica Nassar accomplished 14 kills, and senior Dre Shaw was right behind with 12. In the backcourt, sophomore Becky Defoe defended with 18 digs. Shaw added 17, and Saxton added 10 more. Junior Megan McBride accomplished her 8th double-double of the season. She had 36 assists and 14 digs. The leading blocker of the night was freshman Corina Mormert with 6. The Beavers are now 2-0 all-time against Colorado. Well, there you have it, Beaver fans. Women's volleyball taking yet another win of the season. Keep it up, ladies.
On Saturday night, the women's volleyball team was back in Gill Coliseum again to take on the Utah Utes, who entered the match with an overall record of 9-14 and 4-10 in conference play. The Beavers cruised to another victory, this time being led by Camille Saxton and Dre Shaw. With more on Saturday's match, here's Sports Show reporter Ashley Bettmalik.
The annual Spike Out match set the mood for a Beavers win with a crowd of 1,241. The Utah Utes came off a win against Oregon the previous day. However, the Beavers did not let that affect them. The Lady Beavs started match 1 with 5 points before the Utes scored 1. Although there were 4 tight scores throughout the matches, OSU pulled ahead, sweeping the Utes in a 3-match win. Junior Camille Saxton had a match high of 13 kills along with 2 aces. Megan McBride also had an ace with an outstanding 34 assists. Senior Dre Shaw had a career high for aces with 2 and earned her 2nd double-double of the weekend with 11 kills and 14 digs. Sophomore Becky Defoe led the backcourt with 21 digs. The Beavers had a total of 42 kills, 38 assists, and 56 digs. They are now 6-8 in the Pac-12 conference.
After a strong win in just 3 matches against the Utah Utes, the Lady Beavers will be traveling Friday, November 4th to the University of Arizona.
The men's soccer team traveled to Southern California last weekend to take on 2 strong opponents, the San Diego State Aztecs and the UCLA Bruins. With more on this past weekend's matches, here is Sports Show reporter Nick Charbonnier.
After getting a pair of wins over the Bay Area schools the previous weekend, the Beavers traveled to Southern California to take on San Diego State and UCLA. On Friday, the Beavers battled against San Diego State and got shut out 3-0 to the Aztecs. After the match, Oregon State head coach Steve Simmons said, quote, "Statistically, everything was pretty even but the score." On Sunday, the Beavers traveled to LA to take on the 10th-ranked UCLA Bruins. The Beavers had a strong game from senior keeper Steve Sprangler, who made 5 saves all in the second half and overtime, which kept the Beavers even with UCLA until the 103rd minute when UCLA scored the one and only goal of the game. With the loss, the Beavers fall to a disappointing 5-10-2 this year and a 3-5-1 in conference play. OSU travels to Seattle, Washington for their final regular season game of the year as they set to take on rival the University of Washington Huskies. Kickoff is set for Friday, November 11th at 7 p.m.
The 19th-ranked Oregon State women's soccer team hosted the Stanford Cardinal and the California Golden Bears this past weekend at Paul Lorentz Field. On Friday night, the Beavers took on the number 1 ranked Cardinal, who entered the match with a record of 16-0-1. OSU was able to get on the board first in the 5th minute as Jenna Richardson scored from 15 yards out for her 8th goal of the season. The Beavers' opening goal marked the first time Stanford had trailed in a game this season. While Stanford outshot Oregon State 13-5 in the first half, OSU goalkeeper Colleen Boyd made spectacular saves as the Beavers went into halftime with a 1-0 lead. In the second half, the Cardinal proved why they are the number 1 team in the nation, as Pac-12 leading scorer Lindsey Taylor scored 2 goals in the 54th and 64th minute, which led Stanford to a 2-1 win. On Sunday, the Beavers did something they hadn't done since 1995, which was beat the Golden Bears of California. Chelsea Buckland once again led the Beavers as she recorded 2 goals, her first coming in the 27th minute off a deflected ball from the Cal goalie. Buckland's second goal came in the 87th minute as she blasted a ball from 20 yards out. The goal marked her 10th of the season as the Beavers dominated Cal 3-0. After splitting the 2 games this weekend, the Beavers dropped 2 spots in the rankings to 21st in the country. Oregon State's record stands at 13-5-1 overall and 7-3 in conference play. The Beavers will play their final regular season game this Friday against the Oregon Ducks at Paul Lorentz Field at 7 p.m.
The men's golf team has been participating in the Pacific Invitational Golf Tournament over the last 3 days down south in Stockton, California. With more on men's golf, here's men's golf insider David Fink.
Thanks, Alex. It was a great off week for the Beavs as we had a couple of great practices during the week to prepare for the Pacific Invitational at Brookside Country Club in Stockton, California. We got our chance to sharpen our short games, as you can see here. It all comes down to who can get up and down and make putts in the clutch. Traveling to the Brookside Country Club in Stockton, California for the 2nd year in a row definitely helped us become familiar with the course. To win, you simply have to be able to perform on the greens. We are hoping to come home victorious this year after finishing runner-up a year ago. The Pacific Invitational started off with Alex Moore and Matt Rawitzer, a transfer from the University of Idaho, shooting 300 par 68 in the first round. The second round was quite windy, with over 30-mile-an-hour gusts, and played very tough. But Alex Moore continued to show his maturity and knowledge, posting a solid 100 par 70. Scott Kim, proving to be a standout freshman, also played solid, posting a score of 3 over par 74. After the first 2 days, we found ourselves 2 strokes behind Colorado State and tied with the University of Nevada going into the final round. Moore battled to the end and finished runner-up 1 shot behind Nevada's Kevin Lucas. But due to Lucas's birdie on the final hole, the University of Nevada tied us, forcing a playoff. The Beavs played clutch on the sudden death playoff hole as our team of 5 shot a total of 4 under par, but the University of Nevada did not have the same luck as 2 of their players made a double bogey, 7, and a bogey 6, which secured our first place finish in the 2011 Pacific Invitational in Stockton, California. To end the fall season with a victory is a confidence builder for us. Now it is time for the off-season, where tougher practice regimens and workouts kick in, to give us the upper hand and to represent Oregon State University come spring season time.
It was another good week for a number of former Oregon State football players this past Sunday. With another edition of Former Beavs in the Pros, here's Sports Show reporter Amanda Caraway.
It was another week in the NFL, and that means midday. One player who has been a vital part of the Buffalo Bills' defensive success this season is linebacker Nick Barnett.
Barnett racked up 10 tackles in the Bills' 23-0 shutout win against the Washington Redskins. This adds to his total of 58 tackles on the season. Quarterback Matt Moore has recently been given a chance to get more playing time this season after a Miami starter, Chad Henne, was injured earlier this year. Moore was 13 for 22 for 138 yards passing and rushed for 31 yards and 1 touchdown for the Dolphins Monday night as they fought for their first win of the season against the New York Giants. Unfortunately, Moore and Miami fell short and lost the Giants 20-17. A Beaver who will be back on the playing field this season for the first time is TJ Husmann-Zada. The wide receiver was traded earlier this week to the Oakland Raiders and will reunite with former Cincinnati Bengals teammate quarterback Carson Palmer. Cornerback Brandon Browner, who has started all 7 games this season for the Seattle Seahawks, was in action this past Sunday and recorded 2 tackles in the Seahawks' 34-12 loss to the Browns. He adds these 2 tackles to his 31 total on the year, with an interception return for a touchdown as well. It was Steven Jackson who had the biggest game this past weekend out of all these former Beavers. Jackson ran the ball 25 times for 159 yards as the previously winless Rams upset the New Orleans Saints 31-21. This is Jackson's first 100-yard rushing game on the season, which adds to his total of 449 yards on 84 carries. Jaquiz Rogers, Sammy Strouder, and Stephen Paya's teams were all idle this week, but will be back in action on Sunday, hoping to make Beaver Nation proud once again.
Thanks, Nicole. And before we sign off, I want to just remind everyone that you can catch Alex Crawford and me on Against the Spread on Fridays from 2 to 4 on KBVR FM 88.7. And that's all the time we have for you tonight. On behalf of everyone here at the Beaver Sports Show and Alex Crawford, I'm Boon Kruger. Hope you have a great night, and we'll see you back here next week.